a big week at MKS, and I mean, we're gonna touch on Pam in a bit. Well, I mean, the producer said me to stay away from that kind of language. You know, it's oh boy. I mean, people. We got calls from
5 seconds
people.
In.
Yeah.
We had this big talk with the producers.
We're getting a lot of complaints apparently, and it's odd because it's more than the amount of listeners that we should have. We don't have the biggest ESPN listenership, but there's a large group of women who are saying that Mike is a little too sexual on air, really pointedly sexual towards people. So I'm working on it, but that was just a slip of the tongue. And is that going too far? You know, a slip of my tongue. And anyway,
see, we're getting easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's all, I mean,
I see where the,
oh boy,
I'm glad
that we don't have a timer like PTI does. You know, the producers mercifully, spared us of that timer.
I'm happy to see you kind of move on from player, but it's just like one.
Who's moving on?
It's just like one flavor of the minute that is just
So anyway, we're gonna talk about Pam and her weekend later a little bit, but the bigger news coming out, overshadowing all of this, Beebo, moments after the event, he posts a photo on his Instagram. It shows him and Swanky Kong exchanging money in an alley, quickly deletes it, but it's led to a lot of speculation. Is this sort of another specialty where we're getting a chronic liar, or is this an actual scandal? And we know Swanky's no stranger to scandals. So what are your initial thoughts on this photo?
Well, I know when I was putting together, the final lap wrap, and I'm watching Beebo, and I see him not be able to cross the gap. I see him green shelling himself, and I think to myself, no one can be that bad. Like,
I know
it makes you think something is going on because no racer could possibly be that bad at it.
I know.
But at the same time, the more you watch, it's like, maybe he is. Maybe. I mean, he's got, like you said, it's weird that, the last place racer is overshadowing the weekend, but that's what's happening. He's got everyone second guessing themselves. It's like the mystery of Beebo. Is he that incompetent, or is this part of a larger scheme with Swanky? Are the Saudis involved? What is going on with this guy?
I know it's tough to say. And like you said, I had that same thought watching him go over the gap, and he's smacking his ass and he's having fun. Doesn't make it over. That's an impossible feat unless you're really actively turning your car down towards the ground. And
even that's not a guarantee. You can try to do it, and it's gonna automatically, the way the jump's set up.
Yeah,
like you almost have to clear the gap. It's honestly unbelievable.
Yeah, it's quite shocking. I mean, that definitely leads to a lot of questions, but you also can think that maybe there's a bit of scamming going on both sides. And, there's some unverified reports about a steak dinner between, as Beebo calls them, these two monkeys, and him early before the draft, and that they promised him the first seed. I don't think that one's true. So there's a bit of a history of lying here. But at the same time, I could almost imagine that two things being true at once, that he was, in our estimation and a lot of people's estimation, a pretty solid racer. Maybe he knows that he is a terrible racer. He's going to be doing these things unintentionally, and he pitches the idea to Swanky. He says, I'll throw these races if you pay me. Meanwhile, he actually has no clue how to race. This is a real catch-me-if-you-can situation. I don't know if this is the case, but I think that it could be a fun little theory that he might be playing both sides of this, not knowing how to race, but he leveraged that, early fame into a little extra cash.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving him a lot of credit with that theory. I think, if you have a guy wearing a bib spanking his butt, I don't necessarily think he's making these power moves behind the scenes. But, I mean, I've been critical of Swanky before. I don't trust the guy. I think there's always something going on.
Well, we'll get to talk to him later.
But I think both parties need to be a little bit concerned because, if you're Beebo, I wouldn't get into business with Swanky. But if you're Swanky, I don't think Beebo is what you think he is. That there might be some sort of plan where he brings, he thinks Beebo's this sophisticated racer, maybe gets him on his team next year. What do you know? The guy can't race. So
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, this spells trouble from all angles.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, there's the higher level board for racing integrity. It's not just the Saudis' decision if a racer is violating these kind of core tenets of the sport. There's the MK World Commission, and, there's MK1 and MKS that they sort of regulate on these big things. So, I mean, it's a bonehead move on his part if it's true, because, I mean, if this investigation comes down, there could be big penalties coming his way, loss of big parts of his salary, fines, suspensions, who knows it. But, that's not something that these payoffs, they're not something that people take lightly. And, maybe if it is true, this is also bringing down Swanky Kong, might lose some control of that team. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on these things, but right now I'm sort of treating it as hearsay. We don't have a lot of information backing any of it up, but, if it is real photographic evidence of a scandal unfolding, there could be big consequences from, the higher ups.
Excommunicado. I mean, it's, we know MKS's, policy on begging. This is kind of like the ultimate beg. Mm-hmm. You're not even begging an individual race. You're just begging at life. And some people have accused, us of that.
Making too much money.
That's not how they reference it, but I like that spin because especially now we are doing more than okay. But it's well, the van is not bad, but it's
I'm gambling a lot. It's not good. Sexy Bacon really screwed me this weekend, as you saw in the highlights. But anyway, I'm staying positive. I've got that beautiful parlay coming down next week. Where everybody.
I mean, all it takes is one. That's what they say. You got to get back on the horse. That's what Lucky was telling you. Mm-hmm. So it, chin up.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind, Swanky being brought down in some big scandal, and I wouldn't mind, Beebo spanking his ass on the way out. That would be pretty sweet to me after he made that rib comment to start the season off.
Yeah, and I mean, down the line, I would love to do a little bit of deep dive investigative documentaries into sort of Swanky and really retell some of these stories of him from the past, because a lot of people coming into this sport, these younger generations. Swanky's a new face to them, but he's been around since the very beginning, back in MK1, if you can believe that. And it's just one of those things. He's just been around. He's done so much in the sport. And in some ways, he's a legend of it. We have him to thank for a lot of what MK1 is. But at the other time, he's one of the biggest scumbags I've ever met in my entire life. And I say that knowing damn well we're going to be talking to him in the next half hour. So
big piece of shit.
He's really something, but he's just a hell of a do anything to win kind of guy, and I think part of that you respect it. He's a Don King type, yeah. Twice the scumbag as Don King, and twice the money too. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's this is gonna be interesting how it plays out, and I don't think it's gonna end too favorably for those two knuckleheads.
Yeah, and let's close out. I just have one last topic on Beebo, because we have to close out with talking about he's a disaster on the track, but he is definitely MKS's most popular asset off the track outside of maybe Pam. What are you making of that, and what do you think about a league marketing some of these stars? You have guys like Special Tay, Player, Beebo, racers who aren't sniffing the podium necessarily, although Special Tay's having a great year. And they're becoming the face of racing to a lot of this younger generation. What do you think about that?
What comes to mind is the circus. I think, and even you go further back, the king always had his jester, someone to kind of drink paint, light himself on fire, slip and fall and some marbles and things like that. And, it's getting a big
blood
laugh.
Down the stairs.
Yeah,
really hard.
And we love that stuff. It's getting a big
funny,
laugh.
Yeah.
And
it's good in the studio, right? We've had a couple interns go down the stairs too. So
yeah,
it was pretty fun here.
And I think there's something to be said about maybe, these commissioners, they've figured out the formula. Maybe, conventionally you kind of market the stars. But it's kind of, you see one person drink paint and you just want more and more and more. And I think
comic relief.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, all these other sports, you got them kneeling for the anthem. It's,
Okay.
protest.
Yeah.
It's just, there's protest after protest, social justice.
Yeah.
And, racing fans don't want that. They want someone falling down the stairs, slipping on a banana peel, and that's what these racers
boy.
are giving them.
Scott, you work politics into everything, and it's a little, I have a point queued up, and now I have to address. You're talking about kneeling, and I'm just gonna put a pin in that for later. Maybe we'll talk about it off air, but. I'd like it if you cooled down a little bit before you came on the program. I know you're reading your Facebook quite a bit before you come on here, but love your race analysis right up to the end. It was kind of like a gymnast coming up to a 10-point landing and slipped and fell like you're talking about. Very funny. But, my final comment about it, I totally get it with, player, Special Tay. They're fun guys. Special Tay flying off the edge of the track when he could have, had just a second place wrapped up. Out of nowhere.
We love that. The fans love that.
But there's something about Beebo, and I don't want to be biased or anything, but there's something about the French, and I did take a trip back to France in in the late '90s, and there's just such a smugness about them that I see in Beebo, and I'm reminded I was at dinner with my my fifth wife. And her two stepsons, and we're on our honeymoon. They had to come too. But we're drinking wine, and the waiter comes up to me, and he's basically talking to my wife, and he's saying, your husband knows, he's a boorish man. He knows nothing about wine. And I'm telling him, I've said, well, I've had 6 bottles of wine today. So I think I know a little bit of something about wine. And I'm getting into an argument with him, and it escalates, and we're not allowed in all these nice restaurants. It's a big thing, but it's just, there's so much arrogance there. And to say that I don't know anything about wine when I've been pounding like bottle after bottle at the table.
A connoisseur.
Yeah, I love wine. So, I get that same arrogance from Beebo that he would say, I don't even know what he would say, that I don't even know racing. He'd call me an idiot.
And that's why it's so fun to see him just, shell him. I watched that on repeat. Whoop! It was so fun to see. Just like the Boston Tea Party, nothing is just a hell of a time.
Absolutely. And just to put a cap in that, you called it from the start. You said there was a little something off with that kid. So I think you had that one right.
Hey, it's not easy being Scott, but sometimes you get them right.
Yeah.